This week, at long last, Labor have released the Solicitor-General's advice about the impact of the Albanese government's proposed Indigenous voice to Parliament and the Executive.
The Solicitor-General has said the text of proposed Section 129 imposes no obligations of any kind upon the voice, the Parliament or the Executive Government. This puts to bed the absolute nonsense of Peter Dutton and Barnaby Joyce and all the nonsense that they've carried on with.
They've been resisting releasing this advice for such a long time, yet they've kept citing it to tell people it's all legally hunky-dory. For months, the refrain from Labor has been that the Solicitor-General has endorsed it as though that were the final answer on whether it is legally sound. The Solicitor-General is the most senior barrister called upon by the government for advice about the legality of its proposals. Right now, that's Stephen Donoghue of King's Counsel. It's a prestigious post and it's widely regarded as a stepping stone for future appointment to the courts, especially the High Court of Australia. His advice is usually given to Cabinet and usually kept confidential. Now, it's good to have supportive Solicitor-General advice as a government, but it's not a guarantee of being legally sound. After all, Mr Donoghue was Solicitor-General advising the government on the Love and Tom's case. You'll remember it. It's the one that said non-citizen Aboriginal people can't be deported no matter how many crimes they commit because they have a metaphysical connection to the land. Now, I haven't seen the advice that he gave in that case, but the High Court didn't agree with the position that his side argued in the courtroom. Now, that's to disparage the Solicitor-General. I don't think anyone could have predicted that result. It's just that the Solicitor-General gives one opinion, albeit a learned one. And it's an opinion, it's not what binds. In any event, if the advice on the voice is so good, why haven't they just been upfront on this occasion, given the national significance and the fact that all Australians will be called to give their assessment at the ballot box? They should be as well informed as possible as they do so. Well, this week, Attorney-General Mark Dreyfus released the advice and it was published. Yet, despite having referred to the advice for literally months, the advice is dated, wait for it, 19 April 2023, 4 days ago. That's no typo. The advice refers to the work and submissions of others too, with similarly recent dates. So it seems the government actually hasn't released the whole of the advice on the matter. It's not released the advice provided 26th of September 2022, nor the advice dated the 23rd of January 2023. One would hope advice was also provided before the PM got to the microphone at the Garma Festival in July 2022. And it highly suggests that the document released represents a highly reduced and sanitised version. Now, I say it looks and it seems because we don't actually know, because Labor still haven't told us the whole story. What we do know is that the document released on 19 April this year is highly political. It contains statements that are not opinions of law, but they are political perspectives on policy, like this one. Proposed Section 129 is not just compatible with the system of representative and responsible government prescribed by the Constitution, but an enhancement of that system, close quote. Now, the Solicitor-General should provide advice about what he thinks the High Court would do with an amendment. He can comment upon the impact on process, but the question of whether it represents a step forward or backward, or an enhancement or a detriment, those are political questions, and they are to be answered by politicians. It's just one example of several of the kind in the opinion. Now, one of the main problems I have with the so-called voice is how it will clog up the courts and delay the progress of projects. But the Solicitor-General tells us, don't worry, because ministers already have to take certain matters into account in making their decisions. Well, if that were the test, then every bureaucratic administrative addition to red tape would pass the test. Nothing would ever be bad in law because all it does is make the minister take a new thing into account. Well, he's right to say that ministers' decisions have been subject to challenge for failure to take into account relevant considerations since the 1970s. But this constitutional change will mean another new relevant consideration will be added to the list, and that a failure to accede to it will open up a new source of causes of action that will require resolution. Again, it's the difference between law and politics. Lawyers don't see this delay as a bad thing because the courts are capable of resolving it. And, well, yes, that's true. But at what cost? And with how much delay? How many projects and jobs will take longer to get off the ground because of this lawyer's picnic? And how many potential projects will go into the too hard basket because of it? How many affected Australians won't even be able to afford to be heard in the courts? The Solicitor-General goes on. It also does not engage with the central legal problem with the proposal, which is that the risk that the breadth of the voice's ability to demand to be heard is not bounded in the constitutional words that are proposed. The legislation to come later can't override or fix this, and so it's a core risk of what's put forward. If anything, the Solicitor-General's advice justifies the administrative bureaucracy of the proposal on the basis that bureaucracy already exists in some form in our system, as if we need more of it. Now, I can't say any of this for certain because Labor hasn't been upfront. But there is something about this advice that smells like political spin rather than the frank and fearless advice that is ordinarily provided by the Solicitor-General. Labor need to tread very carefully here. It would be a pity to see the Australian people's trust in this office reduced because of moves from Labor to weaponise it to do a political rather than an independent and legal job. And it would be a pity if future roles the Solicitor-General were to serve in were coloured by an unfair impression that he had cooperated with government a little too much. The only way to clear this up is for Labor to come clean and release the advice, and that means all of it.